Text it and go again. We're removing it. Where we at? We're at this place. Right. This one, I think. Shit, I don't know. Okay, let's try this from the top. All right, folks? Carry me, caravan, take me away. Take me to Portugal, take me to Spain. Under the sea with fields full of rain. I have to see you again and again.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we are so radically transgressive, our drag queens dressed like men. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radio. So glad you could join us this evening, and it's time for a very special edition of the Decline of Western Civilization News Roundup. Why is it very special, you ask? Well, because normally we require 5 stories to paint a full picture of that week's civilizational decline, but this week I require only 2. A pair of bookends, if you will. 2 stories that warrant more explication and analysis than can be done within the constraints of our ordinary format. And so, with that having been said, Dateline Washington, Wednesday, 25 July. President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. delivered at long last his much-anticipated Oval Office address to the nation this week, in which he was expected to state, 1, that he's decided to stand down for re-election, and 2, that he is throwing his support behind Vice President the California Cackler. Except, in true inimitable Joe Biden fashion, he never actually said either of the things that were supposed to be the reason why he was giving the address. Lady Curmudgeon and I were sitting there watching the whole thing, and we both keep remarking, he hasn't said the thing. He still hasn't said the thing. He still hasn't said the thing, and he never said the thing. And let's pause for a moment of historical perspective here, because this address has 2 direct antecedents since the advent of television. Lyndon Johnson, 1968, quote, "I shall not shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president. Richard Nixon, 1974, quote, I shall resign the presidency tomorrow at 12 noon. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that time in this office. You see, the way this normally works is when you're the president and you are announcing the end of your own political career, you look the people of the country in the eye and you say the damn words. Joe Biden, for reasons that will be speculated on by generations of future historians, he couldn't muster the courage or the basic decency to look the people of the country in the eye and say the damn words. All we got was some mumbled, barely intelligible gobbledygook about passing the torch, and then a noticeably half-hearted thank you to Kamala Harris, which didn't sound a whole hell of a lot like a full-throated endorsement. And that's probably not the first time you have heard the words Kamala Harris and full-throated in the same sentence, but that's not important now. And there's another weird thing we need to talk about with this address. Namely, why was Biden's eye line about 6 feet away from the camera lens, way the hell over there somewhere? Why did it look like one of Hunter's stripper friends was doing a pole dance off in the wings and Joe just couldn't take his eyes off it? Teleprompters have existed for about 75 years now, almost as long as Joe Biden himself. The prompter I am using right now costs less than $150, and it provides me, as you can see, a perfectly direct eye line to the camera lens. So, why does it seem like Joe Biden's looking at something on the other side of the room? If you want my best guess, it's because the old guy is so blind at this point, he requires a gigantic big screen with freaking 8-inch tall letters just so he can read the text. Badly. A screen of such prodigious size that it makes the speaker look like he is trying to get the attention of a cab driver down the street. So this was, for a variety of reasons, probably the single most bizarre Oval Office address in presidential history. As for the actual contents of the text, insofar as they could be understood, I think my favorite thing was how he first made the wildly, spectacularly false claim that we're not fighting any wars anywhere in the world, and then he closes the speech by saying, "And may God protect our troops." Which is a weird thing to say when you're not fighting any wars anywhere in the world. It's such a weird thing to say, in fact, that one can't help wondering, one, seriously, who the hell writes this crap? And two, are they intentionally trying to make their own president look like a fool? Because that's kind of mean. It's not like he needs any help with that. Even many, many decades ago, back when he was in the intellectual prime of his life, such as it was, Joe Biden has never been a man who requires any help making himself look foolish, and may God protect our troops who are not fighting anywhere. Amen. Dateline Sodom and Gomorrah. Dateline Paris, Friday, 26 July. Well, if you're a fan of bearded drag queens reenacting the Last Supper and dudes in leotards tongue wrestling with their junk sticking out, I am guessing you very much enjoyed the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics. The people who conceived this pageant of nihilism and debauchery say their goal was to promote something called diversity and inclusion. But for those of us who aren't lucky enough to be weird, creepy sex perverts, which is to say the vast majority of people in the world, the sense of inclusion was, shall we say, conspicuously in absence. To this reporter, who is old enough to remember when these things used to be exercises in host countries commemorating and promoting their own history and culture and achievements, this thing felt far more like an elaborate national suicide note, and possibly also a suicide note from the Olympic movement itself. For it is ironic today to consider the fact that it was a Frenchman, Pierre de Coubertin, who first conceived the modern Olympic movement in the early 1890s, and he conceived it for the purpose of promoting the many achievements of Western civilization, going all the way back to the ancient Greeks, who conceived the ancient Olympic movement in the belief that if every 4 years we get people from all of the different Greek city-states to gather together in the spirit of friendly competition, it will promote international discourse and understanding, it will reduce the incidence of open warfare, and it might just result in a more peaceful and tolerant Greek peninsula and archipelago. Mr. Coubertin had the idea of taking that same concept and expanding it to the whole planet. Most people also forget that for the first few installments of the modern Olympic Games, the athletic competitions were only half of the program. There was also a very extensive artistic and cultural program as well. The modern Olympics were intended to be a showcase for the widest possible range of human endeavor, going far beyond just athletic competitions. The artistic and cultural side of the program was supposed to be a vehicle whereby all of mankind could gain a benefit from the most talented young people coming together and sharing ideas and comparing notes with each other. Fast forward to today, and what are we left with? A corporatized, made-for-TV infomercial for weird sex perverts and dumb woke politics. If you saw anything culturally edifying in those opening ceremonies, all I can say is I think you have a weird idea of culture. Now, the French may have stopped being good at war, the only sport that matters, around 220 years ago, but even still, France in the modern age has produced no shortage of great men and women and grand achievements that are more than worthy of being commemorated in the venue of a thing like an Olympic opening ceremony. But evidently, the wacky wokesters who are running the country today, they have no interest in celebrating any of it. If anything, this had the appearance of a national shame fest, of France repudiating itself, of the French declaring yet another act of surrender, throwing up yet another white flag, not this time before a foreign occupier, but before the forces of nihilist materialism and sexual anarchy. But it wasn't France that I kept thinking about as I watched this cavalcade of smut and filth and degeneracy. It was Weimar Germany I couldn't stop thinking of. You remember Weimar Germany, where the big cities became such dens of perversion and licentiousness, and it drove such widespread public disgust out in the countryside that it wound up leading to the rise of the National Socialists and a fun party that we know as the Second World War. And now we have the French in the year 2024 broadcasting out to the world that their society values above all else nihilism and debauchery and transgression toward all things traditional and normative. And it's a bold move, really. Advertising your capital city as a modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah after you have invited hundreds of thousands of unreconstructed Islamic radicals to come live there. Like, is anybody over there actually cognizant of the real-world consequences they could potentially bring down on themselves by putting on a display like this? Because the mockery and the derision may have been mostly directed at Christians, but I guarantee you the Muslims liked it just as little. I mean, do you guys not realize that they also venerate Jesus as a prophet? Because I don't feel like you do. Frankly, I'm surprised the Muslims haven't already burned down Paris over this shit. And we come back to the question that we often find ourselves asking. Who the hell is this for? When you're putting this program together, when you've got your organizing committee sitting all around the table and some guy says, I've got it. Let's have some fat, hairy drag queens reenact the Last Supper. And nobody at the table says, who is that for? Why is that a good idea? This thing withstands every layer of bureaucratic government review all the way up to the president of the republic, and nobody at any point says, yeah, maybe let's not have fat bearded drag queens reenact the Last Supper. To illustrate the point, as if it needs illustrating, but bear with me. Suppose you're an average American family, a husband, a wife, 2 or 3 kids of an impressionable age. You sit down together to watch the Olympics, as families have been doing for generations now, and which they've never had any reason to think twice about doing, because the Olympics are supposed to be the most family-friendly kind of programming that is ever on television, where the whole world comes together. They set politics aside and they revel in the honest, earnest pursuit of athletic glory and personal achievement, and maybe the kids learn something useful about history and geography in the process. Everybody wins, right? Except, what do you tell those kids about the bearded drag queen Last Supper? What do you tell them about a dude with his testicles sticking out of his leotard making out with another dude? What do you tell them when the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games devolves into literal gay pornography? Are you supposed to say, look there, kids, this is French culture, isn't it great? And how hilarious is it that the forces of industrialized nihilistic sex perversion, they are always telling us, they're always swearing up and down, cross my heart, hope to die. We have absolutely no interest in trying to recruit children into weird, creepy sex stuff. And yet every time you turn around, there's yet another thing that kids can no longer watch without seeing either outright gay sex or lots of references to gay sex. There's yet another cultural institution that's been captured and co-opted by the genderqueer industrial complex. But let's take the best case scenario here. Let's suppose you and the wife and the kids actually managed to make it through the artistic portion, such as it was, of the opening ceremony. And now we're on to the Parade of Nations, where we all get to see the flags and the fun outfits and the quirky human interest stories. It's the best part of the first day, right? There should be no possible way to screw that up and turn it into an exercise in political divisiveness. And oh, here we go, kids, gather around. Here comes the United States team with the flag being carried by fucking LeBron James? You're actually serious right now? This isn't some sort of elaborate troll? Out of all the people on the team, you picked fucking LeBron James? The reason I ask is because the dude is on record more than once, more than twice, more than 20 times as saying he hates the United States. That dude who gets paid 50 million bucks to work 3 nights a week, 7 months a year, who is a certified billionaire, who is about to buy himself an NBA expansion team with cash on hand. He is on the record as saying he is the victim of an endemically racist society, and you and I are his oppressor. That dude rails against the supposed injustices of the society that made him rich beyond the dreams of avarice, while pimping sneakers made by 8-year-old child slaves and never uttering a word of criticism about the monstrous regime that enables their enslavement. That's the fucking guy you picked to carry my flag into the Olympic Games. If I am our hypothetical young husband and father at this point, you know what I'm going to do right now? I'm picking up the TV remote, I am rising to my feet, and I'm saying, fuck you, NBC, fuck the Olympics, fuck the LeBron James, and fuck France for that matter. And then I am turning on a John Wayne movie. And then I'm placing $5 in the swear jar, because that's what civilized people do when they curse in front of their children. Final conclusion? I am unwilling to still be living in California when the Olympics come to LA 4 years from now, because Paris has drastically upped the ante here, and now LA is going to have to find a way to put on something even more gayer and more perverted than this, and I have no doubt they will find a way to succeed. And I just don't want that happening 100 miles away from where I am. I need more distance than that. But here's my actual final conclusion. The Olympics were pretty cool for a really long time. But that time is now well and truly over. When a thing turns into just another malevolent quasi-government bureaucracy, which the IOC very much is now, and just another vehicle for dumb, woke, sexual politics, it is no longer a cultural institution of any value or usefulness, or any kind of cultural institution at all when you get right down to it. It's just another product that ain't worth buying. Was this writing already on the wall when they blew up the amateur rule and started letting pro athletes in? Yeah, it probably was. But you know what time it is now? It's your favorite part of the program. When I stop my bloviating and pass the controls to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, winner of 3 straight gold medals in the sheer dominance event at the large furry hominid Olympics, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Tactical nuke incoming!
I forgot to switch the freaking screen over, bro. Totally amateur hour over here. Look at
I've still got no sound. I got to get this sorted.
Wow. Okay, you fix that. I'll fix this, and we'll meet in the middle. Chop, chop. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blast Radius, where we are going. What? No, I'm in the middle of the freak. All right. Look, according to Lorenzo, Paris has fallen, and nothing of value was lost. You got that about figured out yet? We have an additional person who has joined us. Jay, are you here today? You want me to stick you backstage for a minute till you get it figured out?
Yes, please.
Bye. Jay, are you extant? Do you exist? Are you really here? Or are you muted as well? And I'm running a complete shit show.
I'm here. Just give me 1 second, bro.
You're good, bud. Right. Okay. So, Paris. Much frogs running around over there. And I find it funny. They didn't do anything French. I didn't see a single French thing but a flag. It's the only thing I saw that was there that was French. What I saw was Hollywood. It looked just like every single Hollywood production of the past 5 years. In fact, it is the narrative. This is supposed to be, ladies and gentlemen, your new normal, where your neighbors are but okay, all right. No, I'd have no hate for any of these people. I have no desire to crush their dreams. I just wish they would live happy and fruitful lives doing whatever the heck it is that doesn't involve my children.
Bingo.
Only request. That is it. If they can do that, I will never say another word about this. But they can't do that. And do you know why they can't do that? Because on this particular point, there are two sides of the conversation, and only one side reproduces. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, they need your children.
Yeah, don't believe them when they say they're not coming after your children, because they very much are.
They have to. In two generations, because in any particular movement, okay. Is that my volume or your volume?
My volume, I believe.
Okay. Did I do that on purpose or by accident?
I don't know. It might be on my end.
Okay.
If it's still bad, just let me know, chatters.
All right. No, you sound fine. You've sounded fine the whole time. You have been just hunky dory.
Works for me.
Okay. All right. Let's go to chat right quick before we move on to the really, really interesting stories. Because everybody knows that Paris has fallen. We don't really have to cover that too much. It's already
in true Olympic spirit, Ben has given me a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you very much indeed, Ben.
That is excellent. I'm proud of you, bud. I really am. I understand.
And I don't even care if it was a Russian judge either.
I mean, you're not that blonde, bro. It wouldn't work with him.
Yeah.
Those Russians.
It's true. I am on the dirty blonde side. Busted.
Possibly even maybe towards a ginger type strawberry job. I'm not going to get into this.
Hey now.
But if you'll let me.
Wait, did you see what just happened? I said, hey now, and Scotty Waddles immediately popped up like 8/1000ths of a second later. That's fucking creepy, dude.
Like summoning him. No, he popped up a split second before you said it. I thought it was hilarious.
Damn, that's the kind of shit that makes you think.
Yeah, if I hadn't actually spoken to that man on a paddle before, I might suspect he was AI. But he was just a bot sent to track us. But I've actually spoken to him, so that's not it. American 101, welcome in, bud. Appreciate you coming through. We got Kissy Man.
Yeah, welcome in, American.
Cliff has joined the chat. That's awesome.
We've got quite a few chats already, don't we?
Yeah, it's going to take me a second to get to the bottom. We got ATL Transparency News. Welcome in, bud. Appreciate it. He shared for us. That's awesome. Jason Godet's already got drunk out twice during your freaking monologue. U-Haul.
That's what I like to hear.
He's doing the full-on rainbow representation. We have Azvarun in chat. He's over here in Juicy J's, which is awesome. Appreciate that. We got Ben T. He's kind of like Scotty Waddles, but with less haze and not nearly as many nows. We got Grim Ben as well. I always like to see him. Garion Arnold.
Grim Ben, channel legend.
I feel like I might have said that wrong. We got Andrew Lenloy. Good to see you, bud. We got
I believe it's Langlois.
You may take your choice. We got Hard Earth. We've already come to loggerheads over that one. The fact that I'm Southern and can't say it.
Just saying.
We got fun with We got fun with dirt. You gotta love fun with dirt. He's fun with dirt. We got robotic.
Yes.
Bulk.
Robotic bull. Robotic dough bull.
But that's a backwards 3, which is an E and a K. Wouldn't that be Bullock?
Mm-hmm. Robotic Doble. I'm pretty sure that's what it says. Let me put my glasses on. Be sure.
Our participation trophy of the night. We have already picked one up. Someone will have to come in with something better than that, whatever that is actually said as. Jay, you want to try this one? Robotic Doble?
I think that's Robotic Doble 3K.
Boom! Confirmation.
All right. You're the man. Thank you.
Good evening, Jay. Good to see you.
Same, Captain.
Have you been looking at the news recently?
If you're referring to the Olympic opening ceremony, yes, I'm passively aware of it. When it was going down, actually, it was the beach. When it was all happening yesterday, so I only got to catch bits and pieces of it. But the most prominent thing, what's going on, Varun? By the way, Varun, try to find me on Discord. I still haven't found you yet. The most prominent thing I noticed was, of course, the trans or drag Last Supper that they decided to portray. And this is really insidious, of course, because as you mentioned, Curmudgeon, that you can't watch anything with your kids now without the social programming being baked in. And also, I think it's interesting the fact that they decided to really, maxi pack all of this LGBTQIAPP2SA plus agenda.
Word maxi pack.
Oh yeah, I know. This was this thing was so gay it made the acolyte look straight.
Wait, here's the thing though. They did this. They literally did this not but weeks after Marie Le Pen's party loses the election in the parliament. Not but weeks after this occurs.
It's true, and I'm glad you brought that up because I did wonder to myself how much different this might have looked if that election had gone differently and there had been a new government with a few weeks to review this shit and say, yeah, maybe no bearded drag queen Last Supper.
So I'm of the opinion that you wouldn't have seen it anywhere near as much had their party not had a chance of winning. In fact, in my opinion, I think that when they realized after the first round that Marie Le Pen's party had a chance of winning, and that they lost in the second round.
It's almost it's almost like an in-your-face thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Isn't it?
Piled it up to 12 after they realized they piled it up to 12 to basically say this is the new France. This is how society is going to be now. Deal with it. Had they lost,
we're going to be in charge forever. Here's your new reality. Yeah. Deal with it.
Oh yeah. Could you imagine how different that ceremony would have looked though if her party had won? They would have had to read that entire thing. Go ahead, Sasquatch.
We'll never know. Because they didn't, because the people that had control of the Olympics obviously had control before the election. This didn't go off in a week or two, man. This didn't happen since the election. This was not decided then. This was well into production. It takes years to lay out an Olympic ceremony, man. It's not so.
Oh yeah, you're damn right.
Weeks. So this has been in the works, in Parliament, in the government, in all of the stages of approval for at least 2 years.
Right. And like I said, how goddamn many layers of bureaucratic review did this thing get passed? And nobody expressed any reservations about this thing like that. It makes you kind of wonder about the proclivities of the people who are in charge of your country.
But you also got to keep in mind, though, that France's parliament is very fractured. I mean, I covered this one time a few weeks ago. Actually, there's about 4 or 5 parties that predominantly make up the France parliamentary system. And the right wing party, while it did gain more prominence over the course of the past election, it's still outnumbered. It's still vastly outnumbered when you look at it. So even if they did try to make a push to try and curtail some of the agenda that's been packed into, like I said, maxi packed into the messaging behind the opening ceremony, I doubt they would have gone far. I doubt they would have changed. Right,
and they have one of those systems where the makeup of the parliament in terms of party representation is often wildly dissimilar from the numerical results of the election, and that's what we saw in this most recent one.
And you got to keep in mind, Paris is also a very blue city. Paris is a very blue city.
Bro, I'm not sure that's even inappropriate. That thing's ultraviolet because you're comparing.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
That shit's so far left. I mean, just look at it.
You put a blue light on it, it looks like a fucking Jackson Pollock painting.
Right.
You're not wrong. I saw the entrance. Dude, there was this dude right next to a 10-year-old kid. See that?
He had his ball hanging out, dude. He literally had his ball hanging out.
And was the guy
This is why.
the kid in the last supper bit?
Yeah,
This is why. This is
that's
why
where
when
we
people
are
talk
now.
about- This is why when people talk about that movement being the movement of maps, or when that argument is made and people push back against it, how can they be wrong? How can you be wrong by saying this is the natural progression, like you've seen in other civilizations, where it goes from same sex to catamites or pederasty, and then eventually it'll evolve animals. That's a de-evolution. That's how it works. That's how you shrink that Overton window. We've seen this in history before. We saw it in Rome on its decline. That's literally how the de-evolution
Before that,
occurred. Go ahead.
think about the Greek city states, and I can't remember the name of the kid, but a grown man would have a young boy who was typically either a newly released slave or some homeless kid that they would adopt. They would basically make them a surrogate son, even if they had their own children. But this kid's job was to mainly lube the tackle, keep functioning. And the individuals that were selected for this went on to have successful freaking lives and stuff. But it was an entirely different philosophical basis, right? This was ancient Greece, and these people would have starved to death if they hadn't been taken on as I can't remember the word. I want to say it's like progynist, something like that.
No, the term you're looking for is a catamite.
Is that what it is?
That's the term.
Yeah,
Catamite.
correct.
Yeah.
These kids went on to be like senators and stuff, and they never spoke badly of their old masters. But is this not what we are witnessing sort of take place today?
We absolutely are witnessing some version of an attempt to normalize such things. That's absolutely correct.
And make no mistake, whether or not it's a matter of we're noticing it or a matter of it being an actual rise in our society, we are seeing more people who either are talking about or being caught engaging in relations with animals. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. The thing is that, like I said before, that Overton window is going to slowly but surely start to shrink. And sure, we might see a bit of the floodgates curtailed a bit in the next 4 years after Trump wins. But make no mistake, though, when we go into the very next decade, it's going to be a huge, like basically a slingshot effect, because we've held it back for 4 more years. It's just going to rush right back even stronger in the next decade.
And as a follow up to that, just as a cautionary note, anybody who builds their entire professional life and identity around talking to little kids about sex, view that person with mistrust and suspicion always, because it is probably warranted.
It shouldn't even be a conversation that's comfortable to have, anyways. Yes, as an adult.
Yeah, I know. People should only ever do that very, very reluctantly. People shouldn't be seeking to do that. That's not normal.
And the fact that you see that it's become so comfortable that people who are complete strangers and people who usually are of that drag community, like you saw in the ceremony, can so casually talk about this and then have the story time. Even seeing videos of them actively twerking in front of kids. And these people most time are on the registry. They're on the registry when they're in these rooms, in these organizations or part of these, whether it be clubs or whether it be schools or libraries, and they're doing these acts in front of children, and it's so casual and it's considered so progressive. There
is. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, there is only one type of person who centers their whole identity and reality around taking the opportunity to engage in sexually flamboyant behavior in front of small children. Normal people, again, don't do shit like that.
They don't.
And normal people should resist as strenuously as a thing can be resisted any attempt to normalize such things. If you're taking your kid to drag queen story hour, you should be fucking arrested.
You should be, honestly. And yes, I understand that discomfort is a valuable emotion. Like I see who posted that in the chat. I understand it is. And that's why you should have it when you're talking to your children about these things. It's a very adult topic because it's an adult act. You know, and the fact that we're blending these lines, like it's in a way we're trying to keep kids, but we're trying to like socialize them to being adults in the wrong way, the wrong aspect of socializing a child, because this is the one way that you can truly fuck them up. So to speak.
Yes, and we are removing from parents one of their most important rights, which is when their child starts being exposed to such matters, and that's a right that should never be taken away from parents.
Because I can tell you right now, and I'm sure the same is both for you when you were in school. I didn't start going through sex ed until I was 13 years old, in about 6th or 7th grade. That's when I started. That's when those conversations happened. I mean, yeah, I had conversations with my parents, you know, asking about where babies came from, and they were, of course, honest about it. But as far as other people telling me about that, I was a teenager. I just hit my teenager.
Oh yeah, for me it was one semester of 9th grade, and it was just about as non-explicit as you could make it, you know, which is the way these things used to be, but not no more.
No, I mean, we have truly, or I should say, we are truly starting to fall.
You know, now we've got kindergartners being made to read books about, you know, old man on preteen boy pederasty and, you know, wholesome little tales like that.
Well, you see, here's the thing, and here's the argument. Go ahead, Sasquatch.
Here's where I draw the line. If I can't read the book out loud at a city council meeting or at a school board meeting, you can't put it in my school.
You may circle the bases now, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that being said, you know, the argument that, of course, those who defend this community, those usually on the left, are going to say is, well, you see, it's only the right who wants to ban books. It's only the right who wants to ban books and keep children.
Oh yes, it's one of their most favorite canards.
Mm-hmm. We want to let kids read. We believe in the freedom of information. Yeah. We believe in the freedom.
How can you ban books? Wait, are you some kind of Nazi?
Exactly. Yep. But they don't tell you what books were burned, though. They don't tell you that part. But
nope, they sure don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that discussion. It's too spicy.
I can tell you the last time I had the conversation of library censorship, it was with a First Amendment absolutist, and I had to talk her down, right? Because here's your public library is one venue. Your school library is another venue. These are totally different locations. Your public library should have access to anything under print. Your school library should have access to age-related materials under print.
Yes, that is a big part of the canard as it gets portrayed. You know, this idea that elementary school libraries are supposed to be outposts of free speech. that ain't the way it is.
The issue is not so much them being an outpost of free speech. The issue is that they want them to be equivalent to a fully adult public library when there is
where you can go and read about any kind of gay sex you want, whether you're 5 or 55.
Nobody cares.
Yep. Yeah, that's their latest fun game of moral relativism that they're playing, and I don't think a whole hell of a lot of people are falling for it. I don't think a lot of parents of small children really go along with the argument for why their child needs to be reading Lawn Boy. Maybe that's just me.
Think about this though. This really does go to show you the insidious nature behind the whole globalist agenda, right? Because this occurred on one of the biggest, if not the biggest, world stage you could have, the Olympics, when you have nearly every civilized country in the world is going to be watching. You know, it's such a huge deal. I mean, most countries will have their sports teams and have parts of their government shut down just for the Olympics, just for this kind of event, and to advertise. And to advertise this agenda, to advertise this lifestyle in such a way, with the biggest religion on the planet to be mocked in such a way, it really goes to show you that part of the globalist agenda is this whole, you can be anything, do anything, gender confusion ideology. Go ahead, Sasquatch.
It wasn't so many years ago when Atlanta hosted the Olympics, and so
28 years.
Right. So living so close to Atlanta, I grew up in the sudden overwhelming buzz that took place. Not the year of the Olympics. That happened too, but that was different. the years leading up to the Olympics, it started 4 years out. As soon as they decided it would be held, that it might be held in one of 4 places, Atlanta being one of them, Atlanta immediately started a complete upgrading of all their infrastructure and everything. This has been in planning for at least 4 years. They did, just like what was it Ben said, they didn't go to hit Bullheads or Us last night and pick up some bullheads. That's not what happened. This was planned, and this was planned way out. So the people who are shocked by this, it blows my mind. It just shows how many people have had their eyes closed through this whole thing. They are only just now going, wait a second.
Well, yeah, and I think the people with their eyes closed the tightest are the people who conceived and put on this abomination. The most shocking thing for me is that those people are surprised that this thing engendered such a vehemently negative public response.
Just goes to show you, man, that the evil degeneracy that you see spreading throughout our world is part of their agenda. This is what they want. They want to shrink the Overton window so that way they can. And I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for just 2 seconds, okay? The reason why they want to keep on spreading this degeneracy is because once you've conditioned and groomed enough children to get into this whole gender confusion nonsense, this nightmarish gender confusion idiocy, you will eventually have. There you go, Sasquatch. There you go. You'll do it one generation, and then next, and then next, and then within 3 generations. Within 3 generations, you'll have successfully confused enough people, enough millions, if not billions of people, to effectively lower the population.
Right. Yes. And I'm glad you closed with that, because that's the point I was just going to make. The ultimate destination with much or all of this is reducing the population and getting young people not to procreate, either turning them into weird sex perverts or convincing them that they can never afford to have children. It's 2 sides of the same coin.
There's another layer here, though, and this is something that it comes back down to that whole indoctrination point, the fact that our schools have become portals to this non-American concept. The whole idea is Marxist in its freaking genetics, like in its bone structure. When you
it's Marxism on steroids. It's just wearing a fucking rainbow colored jacket is all.
Right? But and the giveaway on this is when you go and talk to these people individually, right? It's rare that you actually find an actual homosexual who actual ideology aligns with. They're just pro-gay.
Yes.
Think about it further than that. They're perfectly ordinary people. They're your next door neighbor and the guy that lives across the street. They drink beer and shoot pool on Tuesdays. You know what I'm saying? They're not monsters.
White liberal paternalism is a multifaceted thing. White liberals will be paternalists for gays and blacks and Native Americans. There is nothing white liberals love more than appointing themselves the guardians of what they presume to be marginalized, oppressed communities.
Well, I will say this, go USA. I hope we win the gold again this year. I hope that we, get the most gold around this time around in the Olympics. But let's be realistic about this. This is only going to amplify. This will only amplify year over year. This will only amplify decade over decade. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts, the both of you, about LeBron James being selected as the carrier of the flag?
Not surprising. I mean, only in America can you have someone who will actively talk. Only in America can you have a billionaire actively talk about how oppressed they are and how much this country hates them. Be a billionaire, have their own line of clothing, have millions of fans, and be able to carry the flag of the country that he talks shit on. Only here in the great USA. That's how much freedom we have. Go ahead, Sasquatch.
I actually kind of support the concept. It goes to prove exactly it disproves the narrative he tries to portray. He's doing it for idealistic reasons because his controllers have told him to, right? So He's just filling in the void. He's just saying what they paid him to say. And so he does the things he's paid to do. And that is about the most American thing you can do is sell out. He doesn't do
well,
it.
yeah, and you raise a fair point, and I doubt if this man has very much intellectual curiosity of which to speak, and he's probably just well, and you can tell with the stupidity and internal self-contradiction of many of the things he says that he hasn't thought any of these things through, and he's just trying to say things that are perceived as being fashionable.
And we were backstage earlier, and I brought up a point in the middle of all this, and that point was, how much of this do these people actually believe? How much of this is them receiving the echo chamber of social media and the sycophants that surround them?
And that is one of the eternal questions, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's not a
Because
matter of whether or not-
you and I are old enough to have lived in a world where celebrities, public figure type people, they tried very assiduously never to express any political opinions whatsoever. And we live in a 180-degree diametrically opposite version of that world now, where every single idiot celebrity and every fringe public figure is expected to express their view on every single thing. And what a reversal that's been just within less than one lifetime.
Keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. It's not a matter of whether or not a celebrity believes it or even agrees with it. It's a matter of whether or not they decide to go with the program, because they have to protect their own brand. Because we all know that in this day and age, if you don't go with the program,
yes, and you are expected to engage in something called activism, and the activism you engage in has to be chosen from a list of approved causes, or else you're going to get yourself in a whole lot of trouble.
And the trouble ends up being, well, then you get labeled, you get all the negative istophobe labels, and then you're the target of cancel culture. And we all know
Gina Carano, of all people, got labeled an istophobe.
Exactly. And we all know that in this day and age, the court of public opinion can really hurt you now. Because of cancel culture. It can really hurt you. Go ahead.
I want to quote someone. Beep, bop, boop.
Yep, there it is. And that was actually the first fucking little stone that started rolling downhill that developed into that whole ridiculous contrived scandal that got her fired and is now a big old lawsuit. Disney actually told all of their cast members that they had to put their pronouns on their social media profiles. And Gina Carano said, she's not a person who is highly attuned to politics. This was the first time she had ever heard of any such thing. And she just decided to make a fun little Star Wars joke out of it and say beep, bop, boop. Kathy Kennedy didn't like that one little bit, and it wound up getting her ass fired.
Fired
and
off uphill.
Well, that got her on the wrong foot with Kathy, and then when she I believe just a week or two later made a Twitter post in which she compared cancel culture with anti-Semitic oppression in National Socialist Germany. And, it was an imperfect comparison, not a comparison I would have made myself, but there certainly was no malice contained within it. But she had already gotten herself on Kathy's shit list, and I think that was the thing that caused the hammer to come down.
Yep. All right. So I feel like at the hour mark, I'm going to bring out good news. So let's continue wallowing in our personal personal funk with the
So you live streamed the Oval Office address the other night, did you not?
Yes, I did. And
what did the real time reactions look like?
Very, very butterscotch, man. They were quite bland. The real time reactions were, what is he saying? Wait, no, is this a election campaign? Is that what we're doing as a election commercial right now? Because
he never said the thing. I know I keep saying it, but I'm still blown away by it that he never actually said the thing that he was giving the speech for the purpose of saying.
I am so baffled. How in the world do you continue with the Democratic Party when your nominee has not only removed himself from the race,
Mhm.
but told you who you're going to take as the nominee because he said so.
And now your nominee is a person with 0 American ancestors whom 0 Americans voted for.
Exactly. Ironic, isn't it? I was actually kind of surprised. I thought he was going to give up his candidacy, or excuse me, give up his presidency that night. I was kind of expecting him to say that night. I am formally stepping down as president of the United States. Kamala Harris will be taking over, and I fully expect, and I fully give my endorsement, because if you notice throughout the duration of that speech, the address rather, he never once explicitly says that he's endorsing Kamala Harris.
No, all he gave her was a thank you. There was nothing remotely resembling an endorsement in that entire 12 minutes.
And then what happens the next day is then you hear the news report that the Obamas explicitly support her. So it just goes to show you who's actually in charge, because if Joe Biden was in charge of his party, he would have already given the endorsement. But the Obamas did the very next day. So it goes to show you Obama never stopped being president.
Yep, Kissy may just crack the case. He needs to stay around long enough to pardon all of his criminal family members.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
there probably is more than a little bit of truth to that.
Yeah, even if he does, it's not going to matter, because then Trump can literally go back into office. Or, actually, no, I shouldn't say that, because I don't think you can nullify a pardon. You can't nullify a pardon once it's done, correct?
I don't believe nullify
Yeah.
the pardon thing. It's specifically meant to be unimpeachable once it's laid down. Like it. I mean,
yeah, and that's why nobody could lay a finger on Nixon, after his pardon in 1975.
Yep.
Go figure.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, it lines up exactly with the nature. I've spent the last couple of days, I went and got a full scroll of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and I have been kind of tinkering with it, trying to get it so that it'll work it as a background. But
oh, nice.
Chunky bit of text, bro. The Constitution is significant. And when you sit down and read it, you realize that the government we have today has strayed so far off of the Constitution as to be non-recognizable as the source of its power. I mean, it makes no sense.
And much of the reason for why that is we have had over 90, almost 100 years now of inexorable growth of the central government bureaucracy that has never been retarded or dialed back or downsized in any meaningful way. And I hope that Trump wants to do something about that, because I just can't wait. If you made me emperor, I would downsize that thing by 75% and call it a good start.
Did you guys hear that apparently Kamala Harris never bothered to meet with Netanyahu when he came to Washington to give his address? She didn't come to kiss the ring.
She didn't even take her seat as president of the Senate when he addressed a joint session of Congress, which, to my knowledge, is the first time in our history that has ever happened with a foreign head of state on an official visit. That's a bold move, dude.
It was a very bold move. I'm wondering if she's going to try to. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm wondering if she's trying to curry more favor from the Democrat Party, or at least her base, by making that kind of gesture, because most Democrats on the ground have become very anti-Israel, especially when you look at these protests, are more pro-Palestinian. That might be her way of trying to court back some of those moderate Democrats who've been disenfranchised from Joe Biden. This is her way of trying to make her own mark and trying to pull back some of that base.
I have found it rather. I have found it pretty fascinating that in the first 1 week of the nascent Harris for President campaign, they seem to have come up with no better line of argument than, one, she was never the border czar. Stop believing your lying eyes. Stop listening to your lying ears. That never happened. And two, I believe every fringe left-wing policy that ever existed is a wonderful idea. And it's true. I'm going to say this in as inoffensive a way as I possibly can for our female viewers, but she possesses all of the negative traits that are common in female politicians. And a couple of those traits are the special pleading fallacy. That's what the cackling is. The cackling is the special pleading fallacy. Like, I can't say what I want to say, so I will just laugh. And that means if you laugh along with me, that means you agree with what I just said. And the other trait is wanting to say whatever your interlocutor is trying to get you to say. And she has done a whole series of interviews in the last 3 years where she has endorsed positions, just the craziest, fringest ideas, because there is an audience in the room and she wants them to clap. And the person interviewing her says, do you believe in, do you think we should believe plastics, fucking ban plastic straws? Oh yeah, I think we should, because she thinks that's what the interviewer and the audience wanted to say, and they clap, and Bob's your uncle, and we win. But she is going to have to contend with every single one of those, and it's not going to be pretty, I don't expect.
Not to mention, but just on an intangibles aspect, she's just not likable. You know, when the media can talk about the annoyance of your laugh, when they can sit there and say that they're annoyed by the way your laugh sounds, when you can become a caricature of a politician. When people, when her supposed base that she's supposed to have, which is supposed to be the black vote, right, can literally be so divided and say, "Hey, listen, you're Indian. Why are you trying to claim us?" That's bad. That makes. I don't care that she went to AKA. I don't care that she went to that she was part of a sorority. It's neither here nor there, because when that many people, especially influencers these days, just like the name says, they influence. They have more power now than ever before. Can do that and say, you're not one of us. We don't claim you. That kills her base. There is a thing. Go ahead.
There is a thing that she and Joy Reid both have in common, where they each have 0 American ancestors of any kind of which to speak, but they really like pretending to be stakeholders in the historical African American experience, which they absolutely are not. And I think a lot of black people are offended by that.
They should be. They should be.
Yes.
Like I mentioned before, her going to an HBCU means nothing. Her being part of the Divine Nine, which she was as an AKA, means nothing. But especially the fact that she was raised Indian. She's admitted this before she ever took office. She admitted that. She lied
she spent her formative years in Montreal.
Exactly. It's honestly, it's sad. It just shows you how she's extremely yes, I understand that politicians are superficial. Everything they do is surface level, but she amplifies it to 12. She dials it all the way up to 12.
Every single thing you can do to be a fake politician, she has done, including her marriage. Let's talk about her marriage for a moment. And I'm gonna make another bombastic statement right here. Nobody gets married for Let me preface this. No politician gets married for the first time at age 49 because they fell in love. She knew she was pushing 50. She knew that her biggest political liability was the fact that she's a childless, unmarried woman, and she went and found a dude who was willing to enter into a sham marriage with her where she could pretend she was some kind of mother figure to his already adult children. Now, how does the first Mrs. Emhoff feel about all that? I don't know, but I can't imagine she loves it all that much.
Say the word allegedly.
Allegedly.
Thank you. So, all right, I'm going to intro into to the happy segment. I'm going to try to end this particular Ballywick on a positive.
I love happy segments. Happy segments give me a happy feeling.
You remember we covered a little bit of the overturning, like the rescinding of Chevron deference?
Sure.
All right. So we're starting to see a handful of cases coming through the Supreme Court that are actually being affected by this. The fact that the ATF cannot write laws, the EPA cannot write laws, even through the reinterpretation of language. That does not make a law legal. Even if you try to enforce it, it doesn't make the enforcement legal. And so at this point, we're going through a sequence of different cases that involve things like bump stocks, like silencers and forced reset triggers and things like this that have been identified by the ATF as firearms in virtually every case. That's what they try
specifically the Obama-Biden ATF.
Right. And you remember they tried to appoint one of the Biden appointees, when he came in, he tried to do the person who took a picture on literally a stack of bodies, grinning with his new AR, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cases going through the past few weeks have been relatively, there's no such thing as a small Supreme Court case, but these aren't huge cases, and no one has really heard of most of them. You might have read a little something in some newspaper about somebody bringing suit, but no one's really covered it real well, except for a couple of people on YouTube that I'm aware of. Everyone has a specific piece that they're interested in. Like there's different channels doing EPA stuff. There's different channels doing ATF stuff. There's a CPS also has its toe in this whole Chevron deference problem. There's a lot of but Guns, what is it? Guns and Gadgets does probably the best synopsis of that's the wrong button. One of them best synopsis I've found of the general coverage here. I feel like there's a better way to do that. I will fix it before next week. I promise. We'll go back.
Oh, you're good.
So, yeah. Are y'all familiar with Guns and Gadgets?
I am not. But I do know.
I've heard of him, but I don't think I've ever watched any of his content.
Okay, well, used to he would do like reviews on new firearms and new gimmicks and gadgets and things and stuff, and that was mainly what he was a Second Amendment review channel. Anything associated with survival, military, you name it, right? In the past few years, YouTube has sort of forced him to become more of a like reaction review channel, but a lot of what he does has to do with looking at the laws and like trying to break them down for the common man, as they would apply.
You don't often see a YouTube plaque and a Gadsden flag sitting side by side.
That's good.
Hey guys, bright and early, we have a huge victory that came out of the Texas courts yesterday in the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. And this is a big win for the National Association for Gun Rights, Texas Gun Rights, and 4 individuals. And this is the forced reset triggers case by the Rare Breed Triggers because they're members of.
All right. Are you familiar with the Rare Breeds fiasco?
Vaguely.
Okay. So to throw in the backstory here, Rare Breeds designed or adopted a patent of what's called a forced reset trigger. It's similar to a bump stock, but different. It utilizes a little bit of gas pressure to kind of push back on your finger so that if you're not just holding down, it can pop the trigger back open, and it functions similar to an auto sear, but it is not an auto sear. Okay. So it is not a machine gun. Yes, it can shoot very quickly. It does not shoot but once per trigger pull. Period. It's not a
which would seem to settle the machine gun question pretty decisively.
Well, it's not a gun in the first place, but it's not a firearm.
Well, yeah, there is that too.
So one of the Chevron deference cases was interpreting the force reset trigger as a mechanism leading to the production of machine guns. That was the issue. But since there was no literature, no law, no interpretation from the Supreme Court, the ATF, Biden and Obama, ATF, just decided that they were and started like rounding folks up that were selling them, providing them, making them, or possessing them. Like if you had one of the early prototypes that was produced back in like 2019, 2018, you would be receiving a visit from the ATF wanting to know where it's at, whether or not it's at.
And let's emphasize the point that there was never any act of Congress to this effect. This was just ATF declaring a thing and then rounding up people based on the declaration.
Yep. And some of these people are not only still in jail, some of these people are still involved in appeals processes that under Bruin and the overturning of Chevron deference should see them released, followed by a series of lawsuits against the different agencies that oppressed them. This is oppression. This is real oppression. This isn't.
Yep, this is straight up real world oppression of law-abiding citizens by the central government. This is exactly what that freaking looks like.
In case you were curious. Jay, you got anything for it?
I still don't know as much about Chevron deference enough to really give an educated opinion on it as far as bump stocks are concerned. I mean, I only really learned about it a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, I don't want to try and come in. You guys obviously seem to know way more about it than I do. And I'd rather not try to cobble it together.
CRS Firearms was arrested by the ATF for selling a business card that had his name, YouTube channel, all of his social media on it, and had an etched engraving of an auto seer on it. You can't like pop it out, and without a machining rig or some form of machinery, you're not going to be able to make an auto seer out of this. And as I understand it, and I could be wrong on this point because I haven't tried it, if you made the auto seer out of that piece and tried to run it, it would crumple in the mechanism. And so under no interpretation could this thing be perceived as an auto seer. They are charging him with machine gun manufacturing on every single one he sold. It's something like 1,000 charges. He's managed to kind of plea him down a little bit, but he hasn't bitten the bullet and taken the plea bargain at all. They backed off a little bit, but one is too much in this case.
Wait, was he selling these? Or he was just creating?
He was out and selling business cards that had an auto seer put on it, and his had his name and all his stuff on it, but you could buy some that had your name and all your stuff on it, right? And all it had on it was like a stamped picture. It was etched, laser etched picture of an auto seer, and for an AR-15. And the ATF decided that simply having something that looked
that's a machine gun.
That is an attempt to create a machine gun by making these. So here's the issue. If you take that card and you take a grinder or whatever mechanism you use to grind out the auto seer and put it into the mechanism of your average AR-15 without any additional gas tube work, you will fold that thing up like a piece of cardboard. It will not run. It won't. So how is he being charged unless it is merely the information on the card in the form of the etch? And that is free speech.
Oh, and it is also a regime finding new and interesting ways of putting its political opponents in prison. Let's just call things what they are.
Sure. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. But anyway, good news. We're getting to the good news. I'm sorry.
An AGR and Judge Reed O'Connor, who has given us many wins out of the Fifth Circuit, destroyed ATF, and it's wonderful. First, thanks to support from folks like our friends at CMMG, this channel gets to still operate at its highest capacity, hopefully. CMMG guys and gals are great folks. They have gone out and sued just about 3 weeks ago. In the Cargill decision, the Supreme Court said that, the ATF violated its own ability. It exceeded its authority, and bump stocks are not machine guns. Well, here we are with the forced reset trigger case, which the ATF used the exact same methodology to say that force reset triggers are machine guns. And I've done many a video. I've shot these items at different events on ranges, and when you hold it to the rear, it doesn't keep firing, which is the machine gun standard. There's two things based off of the congressional definition of machine gun. One, does it continue to cycle off of a single function of the trigger? And two, does it do it automatically? Bump stocks don't operate automatically. A person has to utilize that recoil. Forced reset triggers don't operate automatically. If you hold it all the way to the rear, it will only fire one shot. It will malfunction. You thus don't meet the statutory definition. And Judge Reed O'Connor goes into how a forced reset trigger operates, how it actually, the reset is forced on each round that is fired. The hammer has to be reset each time. And he did a great job in shredding the ATF. He also went into a section on how the ATF attempted to backdoor some Chevron deference into this. Even though the ATF says, we didn't ask for Chevron, Judge Reed O'Connor says, you might not have asked for it, but what you're asking us to do or to consider is Chevron-like in its in the way it would play out. So therefore, you can't do that. And
Boom!
Really good. I'm going to jump down here to the application of Cargill. I'll have a link to this this decision. It's like 64
receipts.
pages.
This is what I love.
Came out last night at about 10:15 p.m. Eastern. And it says, applying the guidance from both Cargill decisions here, force reset triggers do not fire multiple rounds with a single function of the trigger and thus do not qualify as machine guns. For each and every round fired, the trigger moves forward into its reset state and is depressed to release the hammer from its sear surface. Because the operative mechanical function of the trigger is to release the hammer, that the trigger of an FRT-equipped firearm functions for each shot fired disqualifies it as a machine gun under the current statutory definition.
End of conversation.
Yep. End of conversation.
He should not have to say another word because that clears it from ATF's ability to regulate it. It would take, it would take an act of Congress.
Not to mention the fact that we should not have our federal court system being clogged up with bullshit like this that's been created by the government itself.
Yes, and even like the punishments behind it are not the punishments for these things. It's punishment for things that you do not have, that you did not do, and are not something that you would consider doing. Law-abiding citizens don't try to make machine guns because they're illegal without the proper tax stamp, and that's all it takes is enough money to own one. You don't have to have any additional nothing. You simply go in and say, "Hey, I want to buy a machine gun," and they say,
yes, exactly.
Okay, give us $655. You give them $600, and then you go spend $3,000, $4,000 on a machine gun that is built to be a machine gun, and you take it home and you put it in your closet because you really can't fire that thing anywhere legally.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing how the free market works.
So if these rules have been vacated, stemming from the Chevron deference ruling, does that mean that everybody who was prosecuted under these laws or under these rulings has their cases reopened again and can have those rulings reversed?
They should.
I expect that's going to be a big question coming up.
This isn't the repealing of a law. This is an overreach of government that never should have taken place. So yes, a qualified immunity, all of that shit should be completely thrown out of the window on this. The individuals responsible for bringing up charges on people who are law-abiding Americans doing as well as they can. There's a handful of other details in this with the Chevron deference thing. Like, the ATF in recent years has decided that clerical errors can sometimes be felonies. And so there's a whole bunch of people currently sitting behind bars waiting for appeals on people not putting in their old address where they lived up until last week, right? Or getting the date wrong by transposing a couple of numbers. It's the 12th instead of the 21st.
And there might be a wide range of appeals, the opportunity for appeals being created by the Chevron deference decision that's come down recently. And for those who don't know exactly what it is, it's a decision that says that federal agencies have been given latitude to craft their own regulations that is far in excess of what should be reasonable and allowed. So a lot of that is starting to be clawed back because many agencies have been abusing it for many decades in some pretty shocking ways.
The EPA? the FDA,
Yep.
the Department of Education, almost everything that's been shoved down to the state level by the Department of Education has been done on the footsteps of Chevron deference.
And the end result is you having fewer rights and fewer avenues of recourse when they are violated.
Right. Anyway.
Moreover, if all the shooter does is initially pull the trigger, the FRT-equipped firearm will only fire one round. And if the shooter attempts to reset and hold the trigger in a fully depressed position so that the trigger cannot reset, the weapon will malfunction. Okay, just what I said earlier. The judge also, in every lawsuit, the people who are being sued, in this case, the attorney.
No, Motor City. We didn't say we dislike women laughing. I love to hear women laughing. I dislike Kamala Harris's laugh.
Yes.
Specific her.
Yes. It is actually possible to criticize a woman without criticizing all women.
In general and the ATF, they try to challenge standing. We've seen many cases dropped or lost because of failure to secure standing.
Grim Ben, optimist, pessimist. I'm still the guy with the gun.
An ATF,
Fair point.
But the judge is like, hey, ATF, you changed the definition and you've gone after individuals and companies alike. You've done search warrants. You have persecuted people. You've gone, remember, they did a couple door knocks and seized property. They were telling people, like, here, you've been noticed, you're on notice, and those things you have that we know you bought, they're considered machine guns. And because you say currently you have no.
Oh my God! CNN proved that that the FBI has a national gun registry. Check this out. So check this out. Before anyone knew who the shooter was, the FBI was able to trace the ownership of the firearm from the serial number to the actual owner, and was able to go to the house at around the same time these people were trying to call in the fact that their son might be a little loopy, right? So CNN asked, just out of curiosity, how do you go about collating your serial numbers on the database that you have? And the AD, I can't remember his name. He says, and I quote or paraphrase rather, we pay our tech providers to remove search features from our software so that we don't have that ability. When we want to trace a gun, we have to go to the paper filings submitted by the millions of FFLs around the country, and we have to do a hand count on these filings to be able to trace a specific serial numbered gun, which is absolutely impossible in 30 minutes. They had these people's identification data, they had people on the way to their house within 28 minutes of having put their hands on that firearm. And if that is not possible without a database in the FBI's hands.
You raise an outstanding point, and I'm going to briefly revisit another point that I made last week, which is shit, it just evacuated from my mind. Go ahead. I'll be back in a minute.
We know for a fact that was the case because they even admitted it during the Kimberly Cheadle hearings last week. They admitted it right there and then. The politicians
damn right.
I'm not really a fan of this. I don't know how this is legal, but you were able to trace him through the serial number on his weapon. And even the politicians who were asking the questions didn't even know that was possible. I tell you right now, it was the first time I learned that was possible. I thought that wasn't something you could actually do.
Well, consider that all the way back in 1963, we knew more of the basic information about that incident 72 hours later than we know about this incident 15 days later.
There's so many tinfoil hat things going around about this one, but I want to make one specific point. Is anybody going to sue Joy Reid? I would really like to see Donald Trump sue Joy Reid, because Joy Reid.
I just hope she tracks down the Russian hackers who retroactively falsified her blog posts to frame her as a homophobe. It was such a dastardly crime. I just hope somebody gets brought to justice for it.
Joy Reid did exactly the same thing that Alex Jones did with Sandy Hook.
Mhm.
Joy Reid did
Oh yeah.
the same thing, saying that it was fake, never happened, crisis actors. Alex Jones her ass. I'm telling you, what you really need to do is get in there and Alex Jones her real hard over and over.
That's pretty good, actually. That's a pretty good one.
They're turning the fucking frogs gay.
Turn the fucking frogs gay. What I'm trying to tell
My Alex Jones is better than your Alex Jones, and I will wrestle you.
you'll lose. Sorry, Jay. I didn't mean to go off. Anyway, but no, that right there is in my opinion grounds for the disassembly of the FBI. Like, should be decommissioned, completely put out of service.
Yep. Don't. Yeah. Oh man. I should I just do my FBI rant? Should I just do that?
I've got time. You got time, Jay?
Okay. The FBI has been rotten to its core since its founding. It was founded as a monument to the ego of a weird cross-dressing sex pervert. It's an agency that has never had the slightest compunction about trying to destroy presidents it doesn't like. You can't reform that thing because there's never a good version of it to go back to. The thing has to be abolished and fucking pull down the Hoover building, and I will personally go piss on the ashes. That's how I feel about the FBI. You know where I live, boys.
Hold on. I got something just for that, bro. Like, I've been meaning to put it in your back end, but put it in your back end, but I haven't done it yet. That's my fault. I just want to be perfectly sure you understand. Exactly, man. Exactly. Is it going to function? It's not functioning.
There it is.
Love it.
The audio was a little screwy. I'm not sure if you meant it.
Just because I was imagining it.
Gotcha.
I was giggling maniacally. I don't know whose chat you're in, but whoever it is, from what I understand, you made it once he shows up to chat. Congratulations.
Who's that?
Apparently you made it. You're it now. So his Beak showed up.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
So-
Beak's in my chat. Yeah,
Yeah. You're the one, dude. You're the one. You're the winner tonight.
I'm the one. Cool.
Yep. Apparently.
You win the internet.
All right. Salute, Beak. I won the internet. Just get me to 1,000 subscribers and I'll be happy with that. There we
We're
go.
gonna do that. Don't sweat that shit.
Oh, we'll get there.
Plans to persecute anybody or no plans to prosecute further, you can change your mind. Thus, these people and these groups have standing. A little more, by continuing to characterize a single function of the trigger as a single constant rearward pull of the trigger, the defendants transform the required statutory focus away from the objective trigger mechanics to the subjective actions of the gun user instead. This is incorrect and is the same rewriting of the statute defendants already attempted and failed to do with bump stocks. That was the Cargill case. For purposes of statutory interpretation, it matters not what human input is required to activate the trigger. All that matters is whether more than one shot is fired each time the trigger functions. As Cargill explained,
Shazam.
look to the shooter's actions in deciding whether force reset triggers are machine guns.
Right.
Indeed, the
So-
notion.
So yeah, totally good news on that part. Like, I don't think we need to cover any more of that one. I mean, that's the
Well, and and how freaking much jurisprudence does it require to arrive back at such a simple and elegantly self-evident truth?
Exactly. I take it you're not a gun person, Jay.
I mean, I have it. It just, like I said, I don't have a lot of knowledge on this. I mean, I have
Just-
one, but I don't have a lot of knowledge on this topic to be as enthused about it as you are. Don't get me wrong. I'm all 2A. I'm all for it, but like, I'm not as tapped in as you guys are. So I don't want to try and give an opinion that I'm not really well informed on, or that I don't have a lot of deep knowledge on.
I have been following firearm law since I became 19 and got my first firearm. And ever since then, I'm up to date on absolutely everything in Georgia about firearms. And currently we're under constitutional carry, which brings up all kinds of interesting situations and weird little fuzzy points in the law. And most of the cops have no idea how to deal with it. But that doesn't matter because they can't search you.
I wouldn't call myself a gun person per se. I just get it's a topic on which I like to be as conversant as possible. Is all I would say.
The reason I bring this up, this really, the overturning of Chevron deference doesn't have gun issues. It's not a firearm thing.
Oh yeah, it has much broader implications than that. It's got implications right throughout the entire central government bureaucracy.
Like the FBI reinterpreting what a list is so that they can have one.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
Reinterpreting what a list is.
Yep.
All of
How the hell do
And
you
that's-
reinterpret a list?
All right.
Well, because when you have a nefarious purpose and you wish to justify it by any means possible.
They decided to interpret a like, for instance, the serial number list the FBI obviously has on tap, right? They decided to interpret the list concept as being having it in paper and then utilizing the electronic version to do whatever nefarious act that you want to do.
Oh, and also if they ever managed improbably to get some sort of legislation through for what they euphemistically call mandatory buyback program, which is, just a fun term for confiscating everybody's guns. If they got that through, you would be amazed at the fucking database they come up with out of thin air that they've been curating all these years that they're not supposed to have. That's not supposed to exist.
But even then, let's assume that the database became available at the beginning of the FBI. Let's just say magically they started listing those things immediately. There are still 750,000 to 3 million unregistered firearms in this country that are not currently running around causing mayhem. They're sitting in some dude's closet over there and was passed down to him by his grandfather, and he doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah, many of them are antiques and heirlooms and historical curiosities.
Right. And I mean, probably a quarter of these probably don't function because they were eventually used to the point of being damaged and then not repaired. And at this point,
but if you pass the exact right piece of legislation, you might be able to use that gun as an excuse to go ransack that dude's house. And what else might you find?
Right.
So I got somebody from my chat saying that you should be talking about Vanderstock versus Garland.
Okay, that's covered a little bit later in this video, but we don't really have time to get into it. Refresh my memory specifically what Vanderstock versus Garland was. That the I watched it earlier today, but I can't remember.
I couldn't tell you. This is somebody from my chat apparently, who's really big on
brain fart, and we don't really have enough time to get into.
You want to just let that thing run for a couple more minutes before we talk out?
That the definition turns on the actions of an unnamed shooter is inconsistent with both the definition's grammatical and statutory context. Shreds them. Absolutely shreds them. Judge Reed O'Connor did a hell of a job. And here's the conclusion, because we're all wondering, like, is it something that's just for NAGR members or Texas Gun Right members? No. Conclusion. There is no denying the tragic nature of the Las Vegas shooting that motivated the final rule. But no matter how terrible the circumstances, there is never a situation that justifies a court altering statutory text that was democratically enacted by those who are politically accountable. That responsibility belongs exclusively to Congress. The Constitution assigns such legislative choices to the appropriate elected officials, not life tenured judges and unelected bureaucrats. Rather than respect this intentional feature of our democratic system, the defendants, ATF, chose to advance a policy agenda wholly divorced from the NFA's statutory text. Thus, to allow defendants' unlawful action to stand would be to functionally rewrite the NFA. That is not how our democratic system functions. Indeed, it is never a court's job to rewrite statutory text. As Chief Justice John Marshall put it, it is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. Nothing more. This remains true even when shocking events may underscore the need for legislative change. And even when this prudent constraint produces undesirable results, one must remember that circumventing the democratic process undermines the anti-mating policy goals upon which our system rests. A democratic path to change already exists. By jumping the gun, defendants robbed Congress of the ability to capitalize on political support to alter the statutory language following the Las Vegas shooting. Indeed, multiple bills on this exact issue were pending in Congress when the defendants decided to act. None of these bills were given a chance to become law. As is often the case, public attention waned, taking with it the momentum for legislative action. But this result is even more pernicious than the mere inability to enact legislative change. Each time an agency circumvents the legislative process, it chips away at the most prudent reason for the separation of powers. That is, ensuring unelected and unaccountable individuals, like the ATF, do not make the law. This reason alone compels the court's decision today.
All right.
I love that line, and I am going to commit it to memory. It is never the job of the judiciary to rewrite the words of a statute. Beautiful. Couldn't say it any better myself.
Okay, you got any closing words?
Other than I'm not really too knowledgeable on the topic, but I do love the fact that we were able to cover some more politics tonight, guys. I look forward to watching more of the Olympics. I appreciate you guys for having me on here. Sasquatch and Captain Curmudgeon. To everybody out there watching, if you want to see more of my own content and stuff that I actually can give more of a discussion on and be more knowledgeable about, come on over to my channel, Jay's Hot Topics. It's the same for my Rumble and for the Twitter. Make sure to subscribe to each of those. Come on over. I'd love to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Do that thing, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius. We sure do appreciate it, as we do every week, when you join us here on Sunday night in an attempt to unpack the craziness of the previous week. Thanks very much indeed to Juicy J for joining us. Go subscribe to his channel and consume the hell out of his content right now. You won't regret it. We will see you next week. Same Capmudgeon time, same Capmudgeon channel. And same Sasquatch channel, too. Possibly same Juicy J channel. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn!
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?